Bury me in a nameless grave. I came from God, a world to save. I brought forth wisdom from above. Worship, liberty, and love. They slew me, for I did disparage, therefore, religion, law, and marriage. So be my grave without a name. May earth swallow up my shame. Fuck yeah, I got it.
That's great, man.
I don't know why we got so cracked up during this. By the way, that was the great Aleister Crowley, the Beast 666, Satan himself. Well, yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I cracked up, man. I love his words so much.
I do too, dude. The thing is, man, I was listening to it earlier. By the way, this little poet is something that I took some time on a kratom ceremony and said, I'm just going to memorize the damn thing. I love it so much. Yeah. And I kind of say it as part of a daily ritual, but I usually say it amongst myself. And we figured we would pop out the old video today. And I said, you know what? I've got to start off the video with that because it means so much to me. So that'll be that, right?
Yeah, well, bury me in a nameless grave. I love that saying because I think it shows us that not to be so attached to this old meat body we're dragging around with us, This old meat body is our handcuffs. I was thinking about that the other day. Like, our bodies,
both, man.
we literally don't realize that we're in handcuffs right now. And I thought about the other day when I was stoned. Yes, I thought about how wonderful the moment of death will be, and what a relief it'll be. It'll be like being in handcuffs for ages and then finally getting out of it. I think that's what enlightenment is.
Man, I wanted to talk a little bit about today. It's kind of why I was so determined we would be able to fit, making this video, even if nobody watches it, to be off of my conscious that I said a few words that I really think should be said, but yeah, I'll go and go into it, man. I haven't even had a chance to talk to you about this, but the only thing that I told you is I've been looking into a lot of different philosophers over the years. And there was this one gentleman, I'm probably saying his name completely wrong. Socrates? Socrates?
Yes, sir.
And wow, he's one of those like obvious names that you see a lot of books about, but you pass it up in the bookstore section, and I'm like, where you hear this name a lot, you just assume there's probably too mainstream. Right. And I don't really think that's the case. I mean, maybe in the philosophy world, but this is very important, and I really would like for all of us to, everything is so, the way I see it anyway, culture is probably the most narrow it's ever been, it seems like, when looking back in the past. And I really feel like we have not only got inside this very small box, but we fucking locked it somehow from the outside and just threw away the key, as it says in the Pink Floyd song. Yeah. But yeah, man, I really want to talk about this. He was a guy probably like me and you. He asked a lot of questions about everything from religion.
No, it's always a quality of the best minds. They're the best question askers,
And people, they talked about him as he's this annoying little man going around and just asking one ridiculous question after another. But what he believed, and let's really think about this part, what I'm getting ready to say, man. He really believed that our main goal in life is to be in union with nature.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that really mean?
Mm-hmm.
So to be in union, as he said, with nature would be to absolutely throw away, get out of our minds of wanting something more all the time. Mm-hmm. We want something. Just say somebody wants a new car.
Yeah.
They get this new car. They are not happy. They're wanting something else.
Or they'll be happy for a moment.
Just a temporary moment.
Right.
We are so we're not content. So his philosophy was, if you want to be content, have as less as you possibly can.
I agree with that.
Not only that.
Yeah.
So throw away worldly things
Mm-hmm.
as much as possible. That's what he done to put the point across on this.
So,
Most of his life he lived with no money whatsoever, in the woods, out on the street. Sometimes he was able to, find nutrition, like in the woods. Sometimes he ate out of fucking garbage cans. I mean, it always wasn't as pleasant.
or whatever the equivalent of a
But
garbage can was 2,000 years ago.
whatever that was, right?
Yeah.
But what he lived in for a long time, or I should say at least had a place to lay his head under, was a tub of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
And I bet if one person was to watch this video, they say, why would I want to live like that? Obviously that's not what we're saying here, but I really feel like can learn a lot from that. This worldly pleasure, look, all the stuff they have to offer is to keep us enslaved.
Yes.
We have enough hooks to take out as it is. And, a lot of people will look at me and say, like a lot of people my age, I mean, they already have way more things than I have. And they might look at me like, frown upon me, like, we know people who said stuff like, why don't you want this or this? I'm telling you, man, that the main point that he talked about, it's one of the biggest traps we have to deal with in this life.
Totally, dude. A lot to unpack with that, man. That's some amazing stuff. But the Bhagavad Gita talks about desire, and it describes it as a fire. Desire is a fire, rhyming accidentally. And that desire is one of the main causes of suffering.
That was mentioned also.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Krishna tells Arjuna in the Gita, he says, if desire is a fire, you're not going to, and if desire is a fire and desire is suffering, then you're not going to stop the fire by constantly feeding it more fuel, which is what people do by constantly chasing material pleasures. And another thing that yogis talk about is, these things that you're attracted to, material things that you're attracted to that give you these temporary, illusory pleasures. You see, you're not even really wanting the object, you're wanting that feeling, but that feeling is already inside of you.
Yeah.
So the yogis say, you don't need, you're allowing this object to be the key to unlock this, but actually this feeling is already inside of you. You want to have the state of mind of driving in a Ferrari, but you don't want a Ferrari necessarily.
Exactly.
What's important is the state of mind. But and it's kind of
this has been eye-opening to me the past couple of days, more than anything.
It's kind of when you look at the insidious nature of the culture that we're in, and we are in the U.S., which is the pinnacle of materialism.
It has been for a long time, but it's only worse.
And we see so much mental health problems. We see so many discontent people, miserable people, working jobs they don't want to be in, living completely repressed lives. Their best years of genius is spent, and wasted. As our government and our culture holds us captive and drains us of any money that we might make, and then we have the advertisement aspect of this, and the constant bombardment of advertisements trying to get us to think that we're discontent, and if you don't have this product, then you're not going to, the girls ain't going to want to fuck you, or
that's
stuff.
Been said so many times, right? It's not funny,
So culture is an illusion, and it's a trap, and you got to be careful. I think living simple there's something really good to that.
There is something.
Crawley talked about this. He said, if you want to improve yourself, you need to simplify yourself. Get rid of all these complexes and drama. Because most of these things that we care about are just mind trips. Yeah. All these things that we're hung up on, they're not even real. They're just little fucking, just tangled up.
And when you truly realize that, I can't express enough how different,
lighter it gets.
Even this
Mhm.
life itself will become less and less of a worry
Mhm.
about like death into the
Okay,
future.
can I tell you something that I read today that was so amazing that Alan Watts said? And I have the book. I might be able to break it out if I need to, but he said he was talking about the mystery. I have a book that he has that he literally says at the beginning of the
Alan
book.
Watts?
Yep. He says this book is I want to bring to your attention what the mystical experience is and how that relates to our daily lives. That's the whole main objective of the book. And he says that a lot of people when they have mystical experiences, and he had a LSD experience to where he said he had what he called cosmic consciousness. He said that in these mystical experiences that people have, whether through whatever method, chemical or meditation or whatever, one of the qualities of a mystical experience is you feel that everything, the whole universe is also you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, think about that. He said that in the mystical experience, you look at everything around you, all nature, as you. Okay, so you're no longer identifying with just yourself. In these mystical experiences, you have the epiphany that, oh my God,
Yeah.
I am all there ever was. Now that does not mean that we're having this megalomaniac view of things. I'm
Right.
omniscient. No,
Yeah.
you're still an ego, but you're that thing experiencing itself in you right now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I didn't know he went about it in that way as well.
Yeah.
That's
but
amazing.
we are just one aspect of infinity experiencing itself in this limited way
That's
right
amazing.
now.
Because if you look at
So not getting attached to your body,
Yeah.
because when you're so attached to your body, life becomes so heavy, and so instead of this dance of ebbing and flowing and expanding and retracting.
And this takes
that, and it's this beautiful process, and it's a dance, and as long as we're so attached to our egos, we're not going to enjoy it.
And you know what, man? It's not. I want to say this. It's not as hard as one might think.
No.
Yeah, just a natural discipline. A true way of looking at this, because somebody could say that's you're just babbling on about something a couple guys said fucking back in the day. But look, we know that this, we talk about it all the time, is passing by so quick. I was thinking the other day, like, I can't believe that fucking almost 10 years has went by since I graduated high school.
Yeah.
Like, that just is mind-blowing, dude. And it seems crazy that it was 15 years ago or more we was driving around, like
listening to the Beatles and playing basketball.
When my only concern was wanting to grow sideburns and a mustache.
If
it's constantly changing.
If there's one thing that these Buddhists have down pat is that everything is temporary.
Yeah.
Nothing lasts.
Yeah.
Nothing lasts. Nothing lasts. And that is, a liberating feeling, and also a sad feeling, and very sad if you're attached to who you think you are.
I'm just going to be honest with you, man. The way I really, this is my daily, there's really not a day that goes by that I think, man, I'm ready. And by the way, there's a difference in accepting death when it comes and being suicidal.
Yes.
That's completely horrible, horrible way to look at it. And I understand why people have these thoughts. It goes back to what we just talked about, being in chains. They're seeing this as an escape.
Yeah. It's like if you don't have a bird's eye view of what's going on, like if you're seeing reality through just your very limited perspective and culture influenced perspective, like it's going to seem like a way out. But if if you've had a mystical experience and you get that bird's eye view and you see the whole picture for a little bit and you say, oh my God, there's some stuff I'm going to have to do.
We have to realize while we're here,
that's not an escape, I don't think. Actually.
We need to spend as much time as we can learning.
Right here, reading, right now. And we are living in an extraordinary time where we can, dude, Cameron.
Be a fucking mosquito going to all of the
Yeah.
greats books, absorbing, so much of that. I'm telling you, this knowledge people has learned through their experience, through their, um, you know,
People just like me and you, dude, all throughout the ages have existed. As long as there's been, and we know there's been anatomically similar humans to me and you for hundreds of thousands of years, there's been so much time that people just like us have the same. I mean, any free mind would ponder upon the things that we ponder on, and all these greats ponder on. Not that we're putting ourselves on the level of greats, but we're saying we have that wonder and curiosity about the strangeness of our situation that culture tries to subdue. Culture tries to say, oh, it's all figured out. This is the way it is,
Exactly.
Tries to cut you off from the mystery. But when you live in the mystery, life becomes so exciting.
It does. Oh my God. It's like talking about these things. I love how we talked about the other day. It's like we get ready to, we take maybe a kava ceremony, a kratom ceremony, and we just it's like a football player coming out in the foot. I love how we talked about that. It's so fun, man.
It is, man.
You have an adrenaline rush because people talk about different important things, but if you really come to think about it, some of these things that we value to be very important means absolutely shit
to a lot of the population.
And
I'm
really
very concerned, bro. I really am. I actually got really kind of depressed earlier thinking about just the state of the world and just how unlikely it seems and how really bleak it all looks really
it
right
does.
now.
I've been
You
when I get this, man, it's like if I wake up to pee at like 6 or 7 a.m. and like that transition to where it's like the sun's just, and I'm like, is something really different going to happen here?
Right.
Like something besides just
the rising of the sun and the chirping of the birds.
But even that kind of stuff, how many people really stop to pay attention to that?
Like it sounds so cliche. Like I feel like a lot of people, like when they hear somebody like me say, man, when I wake up and I go outside and it's 6 a.m. and it's it's summer and it's beautiful.
We have to value that.
Oh my God. The Greeks, I'm pretty sure it was the Greeks, had a goddess called, I think she was called Aurora. Aurora. And she was the goddess of the morning. And I always feel her when I get up in the morning. That has such a beautiful quality, that time in the morning, and everything's becoming alive and the birds start to do their calls and there's been studies I've seen that showed how like the birds, like the frequency that the birds are manipulating with their chirps, that's helping like things open up and like plants open up, and it's like all working in harmony.
It's so
okay, can
deep.
I tell you the revelation that I had when I was
Please.
A little stoned this morning?
Yes, sir.
If I can recall it. How did I go about it? I was thinking about this. I was thinking about the brain cocktail that we have naturally. Brain cocktail meaning a mixture of things. Or our brain, think about the organic endogenous neurotransmitters in our brain, like serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, or whatever it's called, like all these things and hormones and neurotransmitters that are responsible for how we experience things, And I was like, whoa, like how interesting, isn't it? That, that we have these really specific chemicals in our brains that make us feel a certain way when we need to,
and there's different ways of tapping into those.
So it's
like,
and how these chemicals are released to help us navigate through life. And I was just kind of like just amazed by that. I was like, whoa, like why don't we have some crazy ass chemical in our brain that just randomly produced, throughout evolution? Like
everything's so perfect.
Why is it such a perfect synchronicity? And I think that we take so much for granted. And like when you observe these things, especially when you're under the influence of some of these plants, it really tunes you into just how much we take for granted. And dude, our situation is the most insane synchronicity. Like why is it not that we are just in pain 24/7? I know there are people that are in pain,
but not
the
each
majority
individual,
of people that are normal and healthy. you know, we're just perfect synchronicity, you know, and we throw it away, man.
You
And
know,
we and we
it's
when we and we toxify the planet, and
yeah,
we destroy our environment, we destroy and rape our ecosystem, and we just completely plumage and rape this perfect synchronistic ecosystem, you know. And it's so disturbing to me that we don't get more concerned about this, you know. And then I think, like, what can I do about this,
yeah.
you
You
know?
feel so powerless in that
Yeah,
situation. You know, I really believe in our area, and I can think of so many people right offhand that when you bring up the horrible decline in the world, they shrug their shoulders and say this is all part of the tribulation.
right,
You know, it's not supposed they don't want it to get better. It's
right.
supposed to continue to get worse and worse. And you know what? I wonder if it's not that exact
It's such a
mindset
cop out, you know.
that has been the reason
Yeah.
everything's been so destroyed. I mean, it's you know, you get the masses together to, you know, plot the destruction of man and plot the destruction of the world itself, you know.
Think about the people that are running things and making decisions on a daily basis, okay? You know, I'm very picky, whether it be at my job or, you know, what I want on my food, you know, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like, you know, I like things done a certain way, so, you know, with
Yeah,
certain things.
exactly.
And like, you know, for example, like taking substances, like, I don't
Yeah.
trust anybody, dude. Like, I make sure I get
Yeah,
trusted,
you're not gonna
tested
go out into
products,
the street and just
because
like
I don't
buy
trust
some random ass
anybody, you know.
pill. Yeah.
And you know, I think what we see when we look at things more and more about, look at the people that are running things, we see how incompetent most people are, who's teaching,
Yeah.
who's running in the government, our presidents. These people are not competent. I would not want these people
No.
making decisions for me.
No,
And I
no.
was thinking today,
Nothing.
I was thinking, like, you know, I could imagine myself, you know, just me right now looking at, you know, somebody signing a bill and being like, bro, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
You know, like, but, you know, like, why are these people making these decisions
Yeah.
without the people's consent? Like, the people should be running
It's
things.
crazy.
It's crazy.
It
It's
is so
so scary, dude.
it's
We've literally just surrendered our power, dude.
yeah. And you
It's-
know,
it's crazy.
that's the part. Can this be reversed? You know,
And this is why I'm so adamant about psychedelics and
Yeah.
these plants, is because we need rapid transformation of consciousness, man. This is no
you
joke.
hear the
We are on the
same
brink
thing.
of
Look,
extinction.
you run down the road, you hear the same conversations. You turn on the TV, you hear the same conversations. People that go to church, they hear the same sermons. You know, everything is repetitive, the exact same, like no changes. We don't think for ourselves. You know, we don't look. You know, we have to, man. Like, this is so urgent.
Yeah.
You know, like it just I just think when you mentioned what can I do about this, you know, I feel so powerless about it as well. And I think maybe just by talking about this so much,
Right.
you know, something will,
Right.
you know.
I mean, you know, this is better than nothing. I think, you know, McKenna talked about spread the meme.
Yeah.
Spread the meme. You know, a meme has a different
Way
connotation, you know, but what meme meant is a meme is the smallest unit of an idea. So a McKenna meme would be 5 dried grams in silent darkness. That's a meme that he threw out into the matrix, you know, or it's all these different ideas. So, like, we are in a meme war. We are in all these competing ideas, you know, so we have to shoot our ideas upstream, you know, and however we can, and try to show people that, you know, the way we're running things may not be the best way. Definitely isn't the best way, you know.
That's a nice way to put it, brother. You know, I think the truth is, you know, for one, when it comes to religion, to break away completely from that, and it's, like I said earlier, to be a discipline to really break away from that deep, you know, rooted doctrine that's, you know, that's been lasered into our brain, you know, and really just look at things for how they are, you know. And you know, we talk about this a lot, but taking these very sacred plants, you know, reading something different, absolutely break free from, look, the fucking guy who's in, the guy who's in before that, it don't matter what side it is, they are all full of it. They're greedy. Sometimes I'll be in the middle of a ceremony. I get so riled up about thinking about that. I'll just say out loud, you know, I desecrate what is going on in this country and other countries and the people who lead. Just talk about rage and getting really riled up. That's where it's at. That's where the true sin is. And the things that they talk about. We there needs to be more people stand up and talk about what's really important. These people who are living only for this fleshly body. And there was another guy that I read. By the way, I told one story about one of the philosophers that I read, and it's so great, looking back at some of the greats, and you can, oh God, man, there's some people it's crazy, talked about stuff we did, but so many fucking hundreds or thousands of years ago, and I got so inspired.
Yeah.
I've never been so, when you look, okay, take Aleister Crowley, take Terence McKenna, Ram Dass, the guy you just brought up, Alan Watts. They all had a different form in approaching the truth, right?
Right.
But they came up with the same exact answer at the end. Well, what's that? We are all one. Me and you're the same.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's the same. We're the fucking moon, the stars.
Mm-hmm. And that there is really no distinction. This is what Alan Watts said in what I was reading today. He said there's really no distinction between the physical and the spiritual. Yeah. It's all spiritual.
Yeah.
We are literally spirit incarnate.
Yeah.
There is no distinction. It's all here right now.
Yeah. This, and somebody could say, and because I've thought about it so fucking much, we've talked about it, and then what's the point of it all?
Mm.
That's another road to go down. Like,
mm-hmm.
Okay, so why don't we just, people think of God, you'd be one person just sitting back on the throne,
mm-hmm.
Just smoking hashish and staying in this, like, well, you wouldn't have to since back. I don't know fucking know, but what would be the point in just all this, creating this place that was once perfect but now has been desecrated by man, men desecrating other men.
Yeah.
And we're experiencing to be mortal.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I mean, the idea of, there's many different angles we get. I think ultimately, I have surrendered myself. I like to say that I trust the universe.
Yeah.
I trust the universe. What does that mean? That means that this process that I am embedded in is much so incomprehensible to my ego. But there is a truth. And I observe, how the universe sustains me, day by day. And I know it's crazy that reality just isn't falling apart at all times, but we are supported, and I think that's an evidence to trust the universe, and then when you think about, purpose and what could this be, I think that it's possible that, it's like we're giving birth to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that's, the idea of the singularity, like that. Or the McKenna's idea of the transcendental object at the end of time. He said that there is a history is being pulled to the future. That there is something way out here in the future that is organizing and drawing everything to it and making things happen so that it facilitates it coming to it. And it's like, Alan Watts said this. He said, the universe is a system that creeps up on itself and says, boo.
Yeah.
Because you are it. The answer to the riddle is you.
Alan Watts
You're the
this?
thing, yeah.
Oh, that is beautiful, dude.
And perhaps it's something like that. I think that it could be, and the idea of like karma and stuff too, that we're all one, we're all God incarnated, we're all infinity poking its head into all these different ways of experiencing existence, and that perhaps God has individuated itself into all these forms, and all these forms and all these spirits or souls, individuals have certain patterns that they have certain things that they're going to have to work through in lifetime after lifetime. So it's like God is experiencing all possible
Yeah.
things just to learn and to
Yeah.
see the beauty of things. Like going from this dirty, just, confused and hateful person and transforming into this. That's the
Yeah.
ultimate alchemical,
Yeah.
gold
You're doing it the hard
process.
way.
Yes,
The
and you
hardest
can,
way
right,
possible.
and you can, through lifetime after lifetime,
Hmm.
alchemize yourself and
Yeah.
discover, like, launch yourself into the abyss and discover that it's a feather bed.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, man. I'm probably going to completely butcher this, but I was like reading this book on, I can't believe this dude, there's like different quotes and stuff by like Dalai Lamas over the years. And sometimes people would like come to these people for like advice, and then they would say something and they would be so like off the wall, they couldn't, and they thought about it, and they get like they tried to cause an explosion within them and let them ponder about whatever this was. Like some of the documents of Buddha, one of these was talking about somebody, this guy just lived in the middle of the woods, and he knew where he's at. People came and talked, asked him stuff about advice. Seemed like an actual true man of like true wisdom,
integrity, yeah.
and humble, and just you really, at the end of the day, what we should all strive to be, just all love.
I really do believe that consciousness, there's all these different levels of consciousness, awareness, and, the way we act, behave, is directly related to our level of consciousness, and as our consciousness increases, we go ever towards love. Love is one of the highest expressions of high consciousness, because if you're the idea is that why would I be mean to that person? That person is Christ.
Yeah.
That person is Christ.
Listen to this. This is a funny angle to look at things, brother. Okay, so just say there's a homeless man on the side of the road that has a sign asking for money, right?
Yes, sir.
So there's like 4 things that could happen. The first thing would be to, out of compassion, your emotion gets in the way and makes you give $5 to that person. Or you give $5 to that person because it is morally right. Or you could say, no, fuck you, get a job, let your emotion be a dick.
Right.
Or you could just decline and possibly go get them something to eat. Right? So really, if you think about it, and I was reading this the other day and I've never thought about it like this. If you give somebody $5 because your emotions are telling you to, then think about it. Is that really the right thing to do? Is that really true love?
Right.
Or, are we showing people love because we know it's the right thing to do? Or is it more of a pat on the back for you?
Exactly.
But that's not the, I think we should feel good when we do.
Anytime you do something good for somebody, like
if
you're a narcissistic person, and you go about it like, in a way that's going to be self-aggrandizing to you, like you're feeding your own ego by giving something to someone. Even that's a start though.
Yeah.
That's a start in the right direction.
Well, you know what? I'm gonna go ahead, and I know we talk about Crawley a whole lot. I just want to set the record straight. Whatever the misconception you heard about the so-called wickedest man in the world, many accounts of people over the years, from really good sources, from some of his followers to people he was into the climbing expeditions with. Crawley, the so-called wickedest man of the world, was the most generous person as far as giving. Loved, if somebody was hungry, he'd take him in, let him stay in his house, cook him. He was a cook. Cook him one meal after another, dude. Like just breakfast, lunch, dinner. And the next day, just let them until they got off on their feet. How many people they do that? I mean, I know, and I'm not, all of us can't be in the position, but I know it sounds so cheesy, but really true though. like a good thing that you can say to somebody. Everybody, it seems to me, if you just sit back and watch, I know you do, it's like everybody's trying to bring everybody down, whether it's competition or talking. I mean, look, how many people do we know, like, that's what they live for, is talking bad about somebody?
I know a lot of them.
I mean, that's the thing, is that's, I really believe that's huge trap. There's so many of them, but I believe that one's a really a bad one, man. You know, getting yourself into that, because there's so much that we're here to be helping each other, learning from each other. You know, we all have an experience we can share. You know,
Right.
there's so much that, and you know what, it's, you know, we can hope and then send positivity down that way, but then at the end of the day, it is kind of depressing, because you don't know if what can really be done about that. I think that's why I enjoy us talking so much, and I think I started telling you this before the video, man, but I kind of got inspired by that philosopher.
Socrates.
Yeah, so
that what you said was, I haven't really. I know that I've
you have to do some research on it, brother.
I know I've read stuff about him, and it was like, wow, that's really cool, but I don't really remember so many things. But I know I've for sure been inspired by him.
Yeah,
I'll definitely do more research on him.
You know, so he inspired me by going and asking questions, because I feel that should be part of our research on this journey, is getting other people's opinions. We have this this thing that, you know, we're taught, it's wrong to go up to a stranger and just ask an off the wall question. But what is wrong about that? That's you know, it's hard to do it though.
Yeah, it is.
You know, I spent some time doing this today.
Right. That's cool.
And
dude.
I'll tell you what, man. I felt, you almost feel a certain load taken off your shoulders.
It's like we're all walking around just not acknowledging each other at all. And I even feel bad about that, but you know, it's like this. It's like, you know, I don't always go up to people very often and strike up a conversation, strangers, or ask them questions, because I think that they would think that would be weird. I might think that they might think that's not culturally acceptable. But as long as I do that and just and act based on how I think other people would want me to, then nothing's ever going to be done. So we do need to inject these bolts of novelty, you know, by doing things like you said.
We all need to be on a path to freedom and getting to that very base of love.
Yeah.
Whereas that's the main purpose in this right here. We need to be free. We should want each other to be free. But yet we have all this garbage going on. People who argue. I know so many people who argue. For example, wars are great. You know, wars need to happen. I desecrate any type of war whatsoever. Yeah. There's never a reason for that to be great. And I'm so sick of pretending. Cameron, you know, to sit back and just...
I was talking about this today to my girlfriend. And I said, you know...
It's stupid.
It's so crazy. You know, people around here in America, you know, a lot of people, they like to think that we're the good guys. Oh, yeah. Like, a lot of people genuinely, like, that's the way they think about things. We're the good guys. We only go into war, you know, when we need to, and we never go to war for profit. Bullshit. I mean, there's so much evidence all around us that we're being destroyed by the people in our government and the people making decisions. I mean, it's literally the same things over and over. Corrupt leaders, you know, fucking things up. Anytime the power is taken from individuals, it's going to escalate. It might be 100 years, dude.
You know what I like to do?
Yeah.
I've learned this. How's something that you could almost make yourself get back at the corrupt system? You can desecrate it, blaspheme it by... you know, writing about it, writing about, talking about it. I try
to desecrate the culture in any way I can,
you know,
but with love, not with hate.
That is the true devil. That's the menace. That is Satan.
That is, you know what Satan means? The adversary. And me and you are satanic because we are the adversaries to our culture.
These people
And
running
to anybody
around
that seeks to stifle freedom.
in our area, they call themselves a rebel. They're the biggest slaves of them all.
Yeah, sure.
They're the biggest. I don't want to hear that. What is that? How are you a rebel?
What are you rebelling against? The North? Like, that was a long time ago.
and just think of that. You know what it is? At the end of the day, certain people are just going to look crazy to the outside. I mean, look, if somebody watches this video, I mean, there's a good chance they'll be like, you know, these people are crazy. They're
and dude, I fully admit that, you know, I probably do have a couple of screws loose. Like, I'm sure I have
do too.
Unresolved
But you know, we all
mental
do.
problems. Yeah, I mean, we all have, you know, unique mental situations, you know, but we got to do the best we can with what we got.
The truth is, though, if you see something a certain way, I mean,
I think that anybody, like anything that somebody says, you know, even if it's a schizophrenic, you know, like if they say something, you know, they might be talking from a different level. You know, we should listen to everybody, you know, that doesn't mean to accept everything everybody says, but we should listen because I really do think that our brains are like antennas. And I think that, you know, we can receive some good information, you know, and dispense that. You know, I was thinking about this today too.
It's good not to entertain that thought so much because if you start telling yourself you're crazy or schizophrenia, you will start to descend even more into madness.
Yes.
I'll try to keep away from like that.
Me
way
too.
of thinking, even if somebody
because
says that.
the culture wants us to think that we're crazy.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, look, if we was to actually tell this to another individual, chances are they would say, you need to go to the nearest. Have you considered getting psychiatric treatment?
Exactly.
Like I said back in Twilight. Anybody who was a little bit different.
Exactly. You know, shamans in traditional shamanic societies, whenever a person would be exhibiting, you know, what we might call psychosis or hearing voices in their head, and
no, listen. Let me ask you a question about this. Like, psychosis seems to be such a vague.
It is.
And
not very understood.
What really is it?
Well, think about it. I mean, you know, there's things called, like, there's drug-induced psychosis. You know, people that go on meth benders and they literally, when they're not on it, you'll be seeing shadow people, and they'll, you know, be deranged in the mind, and you know, there's you know, psychosis brought on by that, and there's, you know, people that have, you know, mental breakdowns, and people, you know, that just crack somehow.
You know, man, I want to be honest with you though.
I mean, we can chalk it up to, oh, you know, they have a bad brain.
I know,
it could be. It could be that, but you know, what if there is something else going on?
You know what? You know, we are mystics.
But I think that we don't know. We've never seen an unmedicated psychotic.
No.
You know, and this is what I was about to say about the shamans. They saw these people as like an important part of the society. What they would do whenever somebody would be exhibiting, you know, signs of not really being able to exist in the culture, and they were not in sync. You know, they would draw them out of the group and take care of them and listen to them. And they saw these people as like they had kind of crossed over into the other world a little bit.
That's amazing.
And they would learn from them, and they saw them as, you know, and I do wonder, I'm not saying all forms of psychosis, but I do think that a lot of what we call schizophrenia could be like some sort of, you know, like maybe this other world is bleeding into your world a little more, and it's making you seem and perceive more things, you know.
Maybe
you know, McKenna said the schizophrenic and the tripper and the shaman swim in the same waters.
Yeah.
You know, it's, you know, because if you look at the definition for schizophrenia, but at least the book that McKenna read, he said the definition was something like not exhibiting culturally accepted behaviors.
Did it really say?
I swear that was like the definition.
Dude, that's crazy.
And he said, well, and by that definition, I'm a schizophrenic. You know? So I guess schizophrenic is somebody that's like...
Well, me and you're definitely...
Yeah, exactly. Somebody that's just like... Schiz means like split. So we're like split off from the rest of the tribe.
See.
You know, and their mind is in a different place. You know? But of course, there's neurological disorders and stuff like that too.
I mean, look... I mean,
who knows?
I mean, me and you, I feel like, mostly are very if somebody really asks us a question, we really do try to most of the time be as truthful as possible about it. I mean, obviously, it's like that was even something I read the other day. It's like lying. Well, we know. Well, just say, our best friend was, in the house right now, and a killer came and said, "I'm gonna kill your best friend." Is he in the house? Obviously, we'd say no. You know what I'm saying, like to help back that. There's really there's another side to everything. Salvador Dali talks about that in his paintings. That's why
nothing is ever what it seems.
He always drew somebody with a shadow somewhere.
Yeah.
That other person putting a different, and nothing is though.
Nothing is what it appears to be.
Yep. And that's our very situation right now. When all these, like you said, there's schizophrenic. There's a side that it could be some type of enlightenment, and then there's another side that's maybe more problematic.
Exactly. It's like enlightenment, in a bad direction, or in a in an grounded way, because that's what's good about practices and having some practices.
I would like to come forth with this truth, actually. And by the way, I don't think I've ever felt so. The kava that we had just taken has never gave me so much euphoria. It's actually crazy, but
I'm feeling quite good off it too, man.
There was a moment about 2 weeks ago, I know I talked to you about this, where I was certain that I had a breakdown of some kind. I've never had such a strange feeling. And you know what it made me think, though? It made me think that how many people has had that type of feeling, and the only way I know how to, I just felt completely out of control and just felt such a pressure, like actually a hand going down, like on my head, like pushing it down. And dude, I just freaked out, man. And I got better. I had me a kratom ceremony and, just talked through it.
Sometimes you just get knocked off balance.
You do. And I think that a lot of these situations could be completely
you could have ran to a doctor and gotten prescribed some crazy SSRI,
what, we already taught you brought this up. I don't even know, I don't think we've talked about this on video, but we really we don't understand this debate on SSRIs. For the most part, we don't really think there's really anything to debate about on that.
The research is pretty straightforward.
I mean, there's I think, okay, one thing that's the funniest, and he told me this many years ago when he was first getting into, like heavy psychedelic use. I mean, like big,
large
doses of like psilocybin. He done. By the way, this gentleman who I'm sitting beside here, it's crazy the depth of knowledge, of understanding. And it sounds like I'm like sucking your dick right now, but it really is so true.
I appreciate
it's sometimes I learn about a new psychedelic. Like a few months ago, I was like reading some stuff on peyote, so I just sent him a text and like fill me in on the rest. But I'm getting off topic. These SSRIs, if somebody was to be on those and they decided to have an enlightening psychedelic trip, it would do absolutely nothing. In fact, that is what people keep on hand, like substance to break the trip.
Okay, so actually,
that just seems weird, conveniently set up.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure some SSRIs could be used as trip killers, but I don't know. Mostly trip killers are benzos and antipsychotics. And SSRIs,
yeah, the bins are.
I'm pretty sure if you take mushrooms on SSRIs, you will die.
Oh, really?
You will die of serotonin syndrome. Yeah, you can die because you're already on a drug that's affecting your serotonin.
Hey, man.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is, look, the government don't want people to do this kind of stuff. Yeah.
No.
Why else?
Why would they want us to know about literally some plant that you can grow? Or go pick.
Yeah.
Like, they don't want that, you to have access to that because that's going to be taking all their cells.
Yeah.
These pharmaceutical companies. And they got all these politicians bought off, so. I agree with McKenna.
Okay, go ahead.
He said, never in my life has the government's, restrictions had anything to do with my drug regimen. He said, it's just preposterous. I'm going to use. He said, the things that I'm advocating. This is what McKenna said. He said, the things that I am advocating. He said, I'm not advocating every fucking chemical that comes out of the lab. He said, I'm advocating plants that have been sanctioned by thousands of years of use. We have so much data on these things. Like this, it's such a crime that these things are illegal. Like this is the most well-known plants we know of.
Yeah.
Psilocybin and cannabis. And,
the fact has always been the most demonized.
You're throwing, pot growers into jail. I mean, that's a horticulturist. Like, you're throwing a farmer in jail for growing a literal plant. Like, how insane.
Yeah.
But
it like I said, it goes back to what we started this video off with. It seems that somebody who truly wants to be free will only realize that. I mean, that's the thing to get motivated about. Yeah. Is freeing ourselves.
If there's anything, people struggle with, purpose. I think one of the greatest purposes that you could set, a couple of things you could set your life up as a quest. Set it up as, McKenna said this, he said, set your life up so that you and your closest friends are at the center of the movie. This is your movie. And you're going to go out
that. Whoa,
and
I never heard that
quest.
one.
Yeah.
I love that.
Right. So I think we should all do that. We should all
yes.
set our lives up like a quest. Nature is full of secrets. Think about that. Nature is full of secrets. You could, in your apartment, on 5 dried grams of psilocybin, could explore the depths of the universe, explore the eons of time, and see lands unimaginable, and communicate with entities that know you better than you know yourself. And if that's not a mystery, then I don't know what is. I mean, the mystery is right here, and the mystery is right here. Actually, that's where we produce dimethyltryptamine.
Yes, it is.
I know we haven't confirmed that it's produced by our pineal gland, but it is produced in we know humans have DMT, or our human bodies do produce dimethyltryptamine. But it's the way they tested it on rats. They did test whether rats' pineal glands produce DMT, and it did.
Wow.
So that's the third eye, and most likely it's produced there for us too.
Yeah.
But the reason we haven't confirmed is it would be kind of hard to do that ethically,
Yeah.
So we have the most, the literal doorway to the mystical experience is right here. Mm-hmm. It's already in fucking side of us.
I love those ancient paintings. I even love even the newer, like the Alex Gray. Like he always paints the third eye like that. Mm-hmm. What's weird is that these ancient paintings, like, how was these people? It had to be because they were doing psychedelics.
Well, we know, like the Egyptians were doing psychedelics.
Like, I get so inspired by those because I love saying this too. It's such a true saying, man. People like the modern man now loves to point about, how we're the most superior. Nobody's ever been so up to. The funny thing is, we're up to date on things that's nowhere near as. By the way, this storm's amazing. It's like putting you in a mystical mood.
It's like when the lightning comes, it gets so bright.
Yeah. But the people, the ancients, like, just say for example the old druids. Yeah. All these people throughout time, they spent so much time in nature doing these plants. They were the ones that were most informed.
Yeah, because they were
the shamans.
They were more connected to God. What I'm saying? Like, when what I mean by that is if you're living in nature, nature is the 3D manifestation of God. Yeah. So that's a tip of the iceberg of God that you can connect with, But as you go along, there's a whole unseen aspect of this too, that you can explore through ritual and through plants.
Would you like to wrap things up here? I don't know if our batteries maybe.
I really don't know. It's possible. We're almost at an hour. We can wrap it up.
Yeah. I want to make sure we we didn't run out like sometimes we do. But yeah, man, I wanted to talk about some of that stuff, and I was like, you know what, I don't want to wait the next time we get together. So I'm really glad we got together and talked about these things, brother.
Same,
And
it's always a pleasure. I always enjoy this more than anything, and hopefully anybody that watches this can extract some kind of inspiration, or
we're all in this.
we're all in this together, man.
Yeah, we're in a weird place, and we got to put our heads together and try not to lose the last little bit of wit.
That is so true, brother.
That's the fucking truth, my good man.
All right, Hare Krishna. Until next time.
Peace and love.